Real leadership isn't revealed when things are easy. It shows up when everything is falling apart. Today on Finding Freedom, I'll be joined by Jeremy Stalnecker to talk resilience, purpose, and how to keep moving forward when quitting feels like the easiest option. Hey, what's up, everybody? Great to be back with you. Welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom. I, of course, am your host, John Odermatt, here on the Lions of Liberty podcast network. Got another great show, but before we get into it, before I introduce my guest for today, I got to tell you guys about Fox & Sons Coffee. I have my mug of coffee here today. Drinking my coffee late today. It's noon. And just delayed with things, didn't make the coffee right away in the morning. But I always, no matter what time I drink it, I always have at least one cup of Fox & Sons coffee. You can get your own delivered freshly to your door, however you prefer it, whole bean or ground, and choose from many, many delicious flavors. Just go to foxandsons.com. That's FOXNSONS.com. You can get 15% off an order of $40 or more by using promo code JOHN, JOHN. So go get some coffee today. All righty, let's bring in my guest for today. My guest is Jeremy Stalnecker. He's a former U.S. Marine Corps infantry officer, combat veteran, and executive director of Mighty Oaks Foundation. He also has, I think, two podcasts that he's been doing for quite a while. So we're going to be talking about leadership under pressure, resilience through trauma, and how to move forward when your world is falling apart. Jeremy, welcome to Finding Freedom.
John, it's great to be with you, man. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I want to hear more about that coffee, but maybe we can talk about that later. That was pretty exciting.
Sure.
Nothing gets me quite as excited as coffee, and so that was that was exciting. I know if it weren't for coffee, I wouldn't be able to make it through any part of the day. So, I mean, maybe that's a problem I have. I don't know, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, Jeremy. Well, let's get into you. My audience, I think most of my audience probably doesn't know a lot about you. So just as a introduction, you can go as brief or in depth as you want. Kind of just talk about, really what led you into, wanting to serve in the military, to join, to become a Marine and take it from there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I've been asked that question a lot. I guess I don't know the exact answer, but when I was pretty young, I was 10 or 11 years old, my dad gave me a book, and it was a book that he had as a kid, so from, the late 50s, early 60s, that talked about Congressional Medal of Honor recipients during World War II. And I remember reading that as a little kid and thinking, man, this is amazing. If I could ever be a part of something like this. And, you read about these heroes and the things that they accomplished. And so I think really that planted the seed in my mind. And then growing up, I had the opportunity to spend time with World War II and Korea and Vietnam veterans and hear stories. And my dad didn't serve in the military, but was always trying to expose me to people who had, and particularly those who served in those wars, And so growing up, that was an influence, and I think a very positive one for me. And so it created in me this desire to serve in some way. Most of the people that I knew that had served were Marines. And so, I never thought about another branch of the military. I have since learned there are other branches of the military, but it took me a while to figure that out. And so, yeah, man, I pointed my life toward that. I told my parents I wanted to enlist. They said, you can do whatever you want to, but you have to go to college first.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a good friend of ours who was a Marine officer said, look, if you're going to go to college, there are some great commissioning programs. And so, I ended up going through a Marine Corps commissioning program and was commissioned as a second lieutenant, served with 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, based out of Camp Pendleton, California. And ironically, I was raised here in California, not too far from Camp Pendleton. So it kind of brought me home.
Mm-hmm.
Did a number of things, a wonderful time of life, serving as an infantry rifle platoon commander and just the stuff that I got to be a part of, again, kind of the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. But then 9/11 happened and all of, the events that followed 9/11, and eventually January of 2003, 1st Marine Division deployed to Kuwait, and then 1-5, along with the rest of the division, moved into Iraq in March 19th of 2003. And my battalion, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, was the Marine Infantry Battalion that breached the berm, went into the southern objective in the country, and then made our way to Baghdad. The Battle of Baghdad on April 10th was also our battalion. So
Mm.
a lot of experience in a relatively short period of time. And then came home from that time in Iraq and got out of the Marine Corps, left active duty, started working at a church. And I can tell as much of these stories as you like or go as deep as you like, but started working as a church, struggled a
Mhm.
lot with the transition, had the right people step into my life and help me kind of get back on track. And long story short, eventually met the founder of Mighty Oaks Foundation, which is where I work now. He was getting it started, former Marine, getting things kind of rolling, and
Mhm.
we met, connected through a common friend, a mutual friend. And he said, "I'm trying to get this thing done. Would you help me with it?" And we've been doing that since 2012. So, um, yeah, man, it's been quite a journey, but I'm really thankful for it.
Yeah. So you talked about struggling, coming back, leaving the Marines and, coming back into civilian life. And, this is something that is very common, for the people leaving the military and, reincorporating. Can
Yeah,
you share a little bit? I don't know how much detail
yeah.
you want to go into, but share about some of the struggles that you faced.
Yeah, so I talk about reading that book when I was a kid, and that's important because when I was 10 or 11 years old, I started to think about serving in the military. And so throughout my adolescent years into my high school years,
Mhm.
I had already had those conversations with my family. That's all I wanted to do was be a Marine. And it's funny, I kind of joke, but I thought that every Marine was in the infantry. I didn't realize there were other things you could do as a Marine, right? And so as long as I can remember, that's all I had ever wanted to do is be a Marine
Mhm.
infantryman. And so I had the opportunity to do that, and then went to Iraq and was part of the initial invasion and all of the things that took place there. So I'm leading Marines in combat. I'm kind of plugged into this heritage that I had read about and kind of been so enamored by when I was younger. And then came home from Iraq. I'd made the decision to get out prior to that deployment. I knew that whenever we got home, I'd be transitioning off of active duty. So came home, landed at March Air Reserve Base, and about 30 days later, I was out of uniform, out of the Marine Corps, and completely separate from the thing that I had always dreamed about doing.
Mhm.
I started working at a church. It's the church that we were a part of, and I don't have a Bible degree. I hadn't been to seminary, but our church was growing and a lot of things were happening. And so the pastor there, who was our pastor, said, "Hey, I'd love to have you come on and just lead. We've got projects, we've got a lot of things that need to get done. If you'd be interested in coming on, I'd have you do that." And so I did, and it sounds like it'd be a safe place to land, but man, I was so lost. I didn't know outside of the Marine Corps and outside of the uniform and the job who I was. When we came back from Iraq, the war was declared to be over. If you remember, mission
Mhm.
accomplished, right? And so
Yeah.
we came back thinking it was done. It obviously wasn't. The Marines that I served with ended up rotating back to Iraq. They were in the first battle of Fallujah, so all of that was happening. So the thing that I had always wanted to do, I now wasn't doing. I'm in an environment where I had been leading Marines in combat. Now I'm trying to get volunteers at church to do what they're supposed to. I got super frustrated. That frustration became anger. I would take it out on my coworkers at church, ironically, right? um, I took it home and I was taking that out on my kids and my wife. I had two little kids at the time. She basically would do whatever she had to just kind of stay
Mhm.
away from me and keep the kids away from me because I was just so angry. Um, there's a lot to that, but looking back, it really was just an identity issue or a crisis of identity, if you will. I had no idea who I was. I thought I was much more important than I was. I kept saying things like, "No one knows what it's like to be me. No one's done the things that I've done." And it drove me into this hole where I felt at least very alone, very isolated. It's 2003, so no one's talking about post-traumatic stress or any of the other related issues that we're talking about now. I was in kind of a military community. Our church was near Camp Pendleton, but I didn't know too many people that had deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan. I certainly didn't know anyone who was talking about struggles on the other side of that because you just didn't do it.
Mhm.
Um, and in the midst of all of that, probably should have lost my family. I almost lost my job, but then I had some men step into my life. My dad was one of them. Some men at church, my pastor, others who started to call me out on how I was behaving, and then not just calling me out, but offering to help. Let's figure this out. Let's walk this out together. And that began a really long process of trying to not trying to, but getting back on my feet and moving forward and finding purpose and finding an identity that wasn't wrapped up in a uniform or a rank. And eventually, took about 10 years, but eventually realizing I was not the only one who struggled that way. There were a lot of people that I served with that struggled that way, and I had a responsibility to help them, which led to what we do at Mighty Oaks.
Yeah, I think that loss of an identity, people can relate to it in different ways, right?
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah,
being in the military, I think it's more significant, right? Because that's the structure there, that's everything, and then all of a sudden it's gone,
right.
right? So that's like you're losing. I think, like for example, like contrasting it to, I think most people listening have lost jobs before. You get laid off, or you have different
Yeah,
things happen in your life where something's stripped away. So I think everyone listening can at least relate to that.
agreed.
Having
Yep,
to
yep,
a part of your life that all of a sudden it's just gone, right? Um, let's talk about identity and kind of reformulating identity and purpose, because
yes.
that's a big part of something that you do with Mighty Oaks, right?
Yeah, no, exactly right. I think you know, we talk about issues that are very relevant in the veteran community. One of those is suicide. We talk about whatever the numbers are. We use that number
Mhm.
22. We know that more than 20 veterans every single day take their lives. Almost 5 active duty service members a day take their lives. Those of us that work in this field would say that the number of veterans that are ending their lives is much higher than 20, and there are a lot of reasons for that. We don't need to get into it, but
Mm.
whether it's 1 or 20 or 40, the number is too high. And so we have these interventions, right? And the VA intervenes, and there are a lot of um, prescriptions for intervention, things like taking away access to firearms and addressing drug use and all these things, right? And there are a lot of good interventions, but most of those meet the problem at the moment of crisis. So here's what you need to do to prevent someone from hurting themselves is kind of how you could frame that. But the way that I look at it and the way that we talk about it at
Mhm.
Mighty Oaks is that certainly needs to be done. If someone's going to hurt themselves, do what you have to do. I mean, we have guys show up at other people's houses, right? Because they threatened suicide or they said they were going to hurt themselves or whatever. So I'm for that. But it's almost too late. The issue is not I'm out of hope. I don't know what else to do, and so I'll take my life. The issue is there's no hope because there's no purpose, and there's no purpose because there's not a clear identity because on the other side of military service or whatever it is, I've lost who I am. And if I don't know who I am, if my identity is not clear, who am I?
Mhm.
Then I don't have purpose because I don't know why I'm here. And if I don't have purpose, then there is no hope. And if there is no hope, then the next logical decision is or conclusion is to take my life because it doesn't matter. And so getting back to that identity piece is absolutely essential if we're going to find those values of purpose and hope. Um, you mentioned I've talked to retirees from corporate life and other people who have had jobs they've been in for a long time, and their identity is that job. They transition out of that and they lose their identity. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. One of the significant differences, though, in the military or in the first responder world
Mhm.
is it's not just a job. It is, you're told that's who you are. This isn't
Yeah.
where you work. You are a Marine. You are a soldier. You are a police officer. You are a fireman. And you wear a uniform that tells the rest of the world that that's what you are. You go to training that works toward the goal of stripping down your individuality and building you back up into this service member. And so
Mhm.
it's not that you have adopted an identity because you've worked in a place for a long time. There has been an intentional effort through training and structure to give you this identity. And then you transition out of that. And now I don't know who I am. I used to know where I fell on the hierarchy because of my rank, because of my job. It was all very clear. There's a clear mission statement. This is what I'm here to accomplish. There are people that I report to and people that report to me. All of that is very clear. And then I have others around me who can support me and I can support them when things are not great. We can be, unified when things are great. So we have a team built around this common mission, this common purpose, and this structure that makes sense to the rest of us. We've all fallen in on that. And now you take that away. And if my identity is not more than the job or the uniform or the rank or even those people that I served with, then um, I don't know who I am anymore. And so,
Mhm.
the way that we address this at Mighty Oaks, we're a faith-based organization. And so that means a lot of things. But one of the things it means is that we recognize that you are not a job that you did. You can be proud of that job, proud of the uniform, proud of the thing, and proud of what you were a part of, but you are a child of God. You do
Mhm.
have a purpose given to you through creation. And we, again, we could talk more about that, but when you realize that your identity is tied to, I'll use the word transcendent, to a God who is outside of space and time, to that which does not change, then who you are doesn't change just because your job changes or your locale changes or some relationship issue changes. Those changes will happen, but my identity is not found in those, it's outside of those. And so, um, yeah, that changes the whole conversation. And it's funny,
Yeah.
going back to my story, as a Christian, as a person of faith coming home, I should have understood that, but I just didn't understand that. I would have said I did, but I absolutely did not. And so it took that process of going, man, who I am is who I was created to be. It's the value and the worth that I have. It's not tied to a role or a job that I had, and that changes the whole conversation.
Yeah, I wanna talk a little about this idea, speaking of faith, and I fully agree with you, with identity, and, I'm a Christian also, and like I talked about with job loss, very different than what you're talking about with soldiers coming back, but I really struggled with that myself a year and a half ago when I lost my job and I decided I wanna leave corporate life and just kind of, work for myself full time.
Mm.
And I really struggled, and yeah, I was a Christian then, I'm a Christian
Yeah,
now, but
yeah,
it was a real it was a real struggle to understand that because I became so wrapped up in who I was, in the role I had, in, in the leadership, you know, different, tasks that I had to do every single day,
yeah,
and when that's stripped away, I think there's a lot of Christians out there right now who, they might go to church and they might read their Bible, but it's not it's not clicking in their head and their heart that really they're a little bit misaligned, right?
yeah,
Or maybe
yeah,
majorly misaligned is a
yeah,
better
it's
way to
good.
put it, right?
I mean, okay, so we'll talk about the Christian community. I've
Hmm.
been around pastors my whole life. My dad was a pastor. I've been around pastors. I've worked at a church. I work with churches. We are connected to other churches. I know a lot of pastors.
Hmm.
So you have someone who is a pastor. They're leading a church. They're teaching the things that we're talking about. And I've known so many guys who have left the pastorate for one reason or another. And there are a lot of reasons, but they leave that job, right? That role that
Hmm.
they had, and they struggle the same way as a veteran leaving the military or someone leaving a high profile, high powered job because their whole identity is that it's wrapped up in that title of pastor. It's wrapped up in that responsibility of helping other people and teaching and counseling and doing all good things. They're all great things that they're doing. But when those are no longer what they're doing and their whole identity has been wrapped up in that, then they don't know who they are. They get lost and there
Hmm.
are other problems. And so, yeah, man, this is I personally think this is the kind of core or central struggle
Yeah.
that most people have when they talk about, purpose, and they talk about direction, and they talk about all these things. I think most of the time it goes back to just um, ambiguity, a lack of clarity
Hmm.
around identity. And that is going to set you on a path to do things you wouldn't normally do, to stop doing things you should do, and all of the other related things. But you have to be settled in who you are.
Yeah. 100%. So let's talk a little bit about I know that you've written a few books, you have some podcasts, and this idea of march or die and offensive faith.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, so I'll start with Offensive Faith. That was a book that actually my pastor and I wrote together on taking your faith on the offense. So, at
Hmm.
a time when a lot of Christian people would say maybe that my faith is personal to me, this is my faith, and it doesn't have an
Hmm.
impact on the world around me. The book addresses how we can carry our faith into the world. And there are a number of, kind of areas, whether it be your home, your workplace, culture, the world at large, inside the church, outside of the church. But how can my faith impact the way that I live? And that, for any person who states that they are a person of faith or a Christian, I think that should impact the way that they live. And so that's what that book is about, offensive faith, and it really is about authentic faith. It's about letting that guide who you are, and be authentically you. The book Leadership by Design is a little bit different, and it really connects back in a lot of ways to an understanding of identity. But the title Leadership by Design, um, I was in the Marine Corps. I went to what I believe are some of the best leadership schools in the world. I went to the infantry officer course, other schools, officer candidate school, schools teaching men and women how to be leaders in extremely difficult environments, in the context of the military, and particularly the Marine Corps. And one of the takeaways, and this is, maybe a mistaken takeaway, but one of the takeaways is that most often, the person in charge is either the one with the rank on the shoulder, on the collar, or it's the person who's the loudest, the most confident, the one who can
Hmm.
jump up on the table and say, "Follow me," right? It's the one who's that super type A. So that's the leader. And then I transitioned out of that, and as I mentioned, I went into ministry and started to read books on ministry leadership, these topics like servant leadership or spiritual leadership. These are, titles that are given to leadership in the context of faith. And what I what I came away with, and again, maybe this is just me, I'm a simple guy, but what I came away with reading those books is that spiritual leadership, servant leadership, this kind of leadership model that a lot of people in the church are teaching, it's the same thing I learned in the Marine Corps, but you add God to it, because adding God to it gets people to do things, right? And so it's kind of this manipulation tactic. Like, I want you to do this, I need you to do that, I want this done, but actually it's God that wants it done. And so, you need to do it because God wants you to. And so I found myself at like the intersection of these two things,
Mm.
like the super aggressive type A guy, or the kind of manipulative, like, do it because God wants you to guy. And just started trying to understand what leadership is. And the conclusion I came to was that we're all created by God to be leaders. Leadership is not a calling that some people have and others don't.
Hmm.
We won't all lead in the same place or in the same way, but you don't have to be type A, super aggressive, confident all the time person to lead. Wherever you are, you've been called to be a leader, but only if we define leadership correctly. And so much of how we define leadership is based on a particular place that we do leadership. It's a job, it's a way of accomplishing leadership.
Yeah.
But those are techniques, and those apply in different areas, and how you lead at home will be different than how you lead in the military. But leadership itself shouldn't change. And the way that I kind of working through all this, it took me a long time, but I boiled it down to this kind of simple definition. Leadership is taking people from where they are to where they need to be. What is leadership? Leadership is taking people from where they are to where they need to be. Leadership has nothing to do with you. It's not about getting them to do what you want them to do. It's about using whatever resources and opportunities that you have, leveraging those for the benefit of the people that you lead. That could be your kids, It can be the employees in your workplace. It doesn't matter. You are leveraging what you have for the benefit of the people that that you have the ability to lead, and you're helping them go from where they are right now to where they really need to be. It's investing in others and helping them to become better. It's making the world a better place because you're in it. It's all of those things. And so when I left the military, I thought that I could take that kind of leadership model and bring it over into church world. So I'm screaming at staff members during church staff meetings. It's not working, right? And then I'm trying to like, why am I failing at home? Because I was a good leader over here. Well, no, man, you're trying to take a template of leadership, a way of doing leadership, what we call the tactics, techniques, and procedures. You're trying to
Mhm.
take that and use it in a place that it doesn't apply. Leadership doesn't change. Getting the people in the military that I was working with, and they were in my platoon or whatever, my unit, my job was to help them go from where they were to where they needed to be. Same as in the church, same as in my home. That didn't change, but how you do it changes for sure. But your
Mhm.
definition needs to be clear. And going back to identity, um, understanding that a leader is someone who serves others and does what's best for others. That's much different than believing that a leader is someone who's the loudest, most aggressive, or smartest person in the room.
Yeah, I like how this all does kind of come back together with identity and purpose. Because ultimately, what the leader's responsibility is to help other people
Yep,
to find their identity and purpose, and then to
exactly
help
right.
that to flourish. Right.
That's exactly
Um,
right.
I think that's an awesome take, and um, really, I mean, it shouldn't be, but it is sort of a counter view of leadership. I think, at least in the mainstream.
Yeah, well, again, I don't know if you can see this bookshelf behind me, but I have
Mhm.
2 or 3 shelves of books on leadership. I have a garage full of boxes of books on leadership, business leadership, and military leadership, and home leadership, and whatever. And those are all great, but most of them teach this is how you do leadership. And I'm for learning how to do leadership.
Mhm.
Um, but where it comes up short most of the time is that conversation about not doing leadership, but being a leader. And we all know people like this, right? We know people on both ends of the spectrum. We know people who are great military leaders or great corporate leaders or great, business leaders or whatever. And they're just a disaster in every other area of their lives. Like, well, you can lead that over there. Why can't you lead this here? So we know those people, but we also all know people who are like incredible business leaders, and then they're really good at home, and they're really good on the committees that they serve on, and like everywhere they go, leadership seems to be easy for them. Why is that? Well, because they recognize that leadership doesn't change. How you do it changes. The environment dictates how you do it. But what it is doesn't change. If I'm serving in a
Mhm.
corporate environment, I've got a job. It's to make those people that I serve with that work for me better than they would be without me. At home, it's helping my kids go from where they are, um, absolutely in need of everything being taken care of, to being productive humans. My job as a parent is to get them there. On these committees, it's to look at the people around me, to look at our job, our mission, and our purpose, and go, okay, well, how do we get this thing from where it is to where it needs to be? That doesn't change. And those people who transition through these stages of life, um, and do it well, are people that fundamentally understand the difference between doing leadership and being a leader.
Mhm. It's not something you turn on and off, right?
No,
It's,
it's
it's
not.
it's
It's who you
constant.
are,
Mm,
and that's why. And I
mm,
think we're created that way.
mhm,
And again, I think if you're, a parent, um, and you've got kids, you're a leader. You're created to lead those kids. Take what you
mhm.
have and train them, bring them up, help them. Maybe you've been placed in a different environment. The environment is far less important than the fundamental truth. And my job is to leverage what I have for the benefit of other people.
Let's talk a little bit about that environment, and how much do you think it's that in in when you're leading a team, when you're leading an individual, um, to make the environment a little tougher, to make it, to take people out of their comfort zone.
Yeah. So this is the challenge with everything that I just said, right? In order to lead people, they have to want to be led. And this is, particularly, we'll talk about like a business setting or a corporate setting.
Mhm.
There are some people that don't want to be led. They don't want to be made better. They don't want to even do the job they've been asked to do. And so you have to manage those people. And there's nothing wrong with managing people. It's better to lead them. It's better for you. It's better for them. It's better for the organization. But some people need to be managed. They were hired to do a job. You need to make sure they do the job.
Mhm.
That's fair. But as a leader, I also believe it is part of your responsibility to cast the vision to the people you're leading about what they can become, about the abilities that they have, the opportunities that they have in front of them, that with the right education, with the right training, with the right opportunities, with the right coaching, whatever, they could do so much more and accomplish so much more. And so part of the leader's responsibility, helping people go from where they are to where they need to be, is helping people understand this is where you are, but that's where you could be. And so that is in creating this environment that says, look, you can just do the job if you want to, or you can let me leverage what I have available to me. Maybe it's training courses, maybe it's opportunities, maybe it's, you go spend time in a different department for a little while. Whatever it is, let me use what I have to help you get to where you really can be. I believe you could be there. I believe you could do this. And it's creating that environment. And if you do that right, then most people, not all people, but most people that you have the opportunity to lead in a corporate setting would say, yeah, I want to work for that guy, because when you work for that guy, you're equipped, you're
Mhm.
challenged for sure. You're pulled out of just doing the job and going home, but you're going to end up in a place that you never thought possible. And so, yeah, I do think that pulling people out of their comfort zone, and the reason most people want to be managed instead of led, not most people, but the reason people often want to be managed instead of led is because they're unwilling to be pulled out of their comfort zone. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what it is. I'm here to do a job. Um, I'm not spending any more time here than I have to. I'm not doing the extra courses. I'm not doing the things. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. We can do that too. But that's not good for anybody.
Do you think that's becoming kind of more common with people that there's more and more often? And I'm not trying to point fingers at younger generations, but I mean, to me, it does kind of seem like it is becoming more common that people just kind of want to feel comfortable.
I think so. I think a lot of that we could talk about. Um, the ability to do work by yourself, whether that's work from home or do kind of like,
Mhm.
we talk about the gig economy, right? Like people can
Yeah.
do a lot of work because of technology without anyone else. And so they can, create an environment where they're just doing a job. So I do think that's true. I think what that also brings though is incredible opportunity. So I have four
Mhm.
kids. I have two young adult kids and two teenage kids. And I've been asked about this a lot. Like, well, what do you think about kids and stuff?
Mhm.
On one hand, I feel bad for maybe, our culture and the fact that there is a lot of that. On the other hand, there is tremendous opportunity for young people who are willing to put in the extra time, go to the extra classes, learn the stuff, and grow. And you will stick out if you're the kind of person who says, I want to move from where I am to where I need to be. And I'm going to take advantage of every opportunity, and I'm going to give a little extra time, and I'm going to do the things. Such an incredible opportunity. But yes, I do think that we've created an environment where people can be as comfortable as they want to do. They don't have to confront difficult truths. I
Mhm.
mean, one of the, probably helpful things about working in a building with other people is you have to get along with other people. When you work remote, you never have to deal with other people. You just do the job and then you turn it off and you go on about your business. Um, so yeah, I don't disagree with that. Um, I will say you look at young people who serve in the military or serve, in our first responders communities, and they're young people who want to do more, and they always, I mean, always rise to the occasion and rise to the
Mhm.
challenge. And so I think if those same young people are challenged, they'll rise to that occasion. But yeah, doing hard things is something we're moving further and further away from.
Yeah. In my current work that I do real estate investing. So
Mm,
I work remotely, but all
yeah.
I do is deal with people in
Right, right.
uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of the best or worst of both worlds. I don't know which way you wanna look at it, but
Yeah, well, and and the antidote to that, right, is what you just said, is putting yourself in a situation. It's like, "Okay, well, I work remotely, but I'm gonna make sure I'm in environments that are
Mhm,
difficult and challenging," whether that's a sports environment or clubs or, finding a place to serve, but,
mhm.
um, yeah, the antidote to that is putting yourself in places that are uncomfortable and out of your comfort zone for sure.
Yeah. What are your views on quitting? And when you encounter someone, when you're trying to lead them, when you're trying to challenge them, you were talking earlier about you're coaching and you're trying to get someone to say, I believe in you, you can do this, and they just say, I don't want to. Like,
Yeah.
some people you just kind of put your hands up, and I mean,
I mean, you can't like I said, you can't lead someone that doesn't wanna be led, and so you
Mhm,
do everything that you can, and you provide every opportunity, but if a person wants to walk away, you again, it's kind of an individual thing, I guess. You can tell when people are struggling and they just need to be encouraged, but I think a good leader also knows where the line is and people cross it,
mhm,
and instead of continuing to invest time trying to pull them back, I'm going to let them go and do what they need to do because I have limited resources, opportunities, time, influence. And so I'm going to find someone who's willing to be led. I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. There is a fine line there. Some people are very quick to write people off. We shouldn't be quick to write people off. We should invest in them. We should encourage them. We should understand that sometimes people struggle and they need to be lifted up.
mhm.
But once you've done everything that you can do, at the end of the day, being led is a choice. And if someone's unwilling to be led, then it's okay to let them go to do what they need to do. Um, on the flip side of that, again, with my kids, I've always told them if you sign up for something and you learn that you hate it, you're still going to finish it.
Mhm.
And there's that too. There is that sense of just having grit to go, man, this was not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But I said I was going to do it, so I'm going to do it. And you work through that. So I think there's a personal advantage to learning how to deal with difficult things and things that you don't like and not quitting. But if you're leading people that want to walk away, man, often the best thing you can do for yourself, for them, and for the organization is let them walk away.
Yeah. So I'm curious, and I don't know how much detail you can go into, and I don't want to put you in the spot, but you know, in this work that you've done with Mighty Oaks, you've been able to help a lot of veterans with PTSD, and kind of reformulate their life after losing their identity, and finding a place here in this world through their faith, right? By centering themselves on God. And I'm just curious if there's anything you can share of, you don't have to get into to specific stories. You can get as specific as you want, I guess, but of, some people who've really maybe, you know, been able to be helped by that, have been pulled out of some difficult situations and found some
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have had the work that we do. So what we do is a number of things, but our core program is a 5-day program. We bring
Mhm.
men or women, they're separate men's and women's programs, to one of the locations that we have across the country. We have 5 different locations across the country, and they're typically in like a ranch setting or a conference center setting. So very nice. And they come, they spend that week with us, and we talk about post traumatic stress and combat trauma, trauma related to work in uniform. A lot of first responders, or trauma related to life. A lot of the folks who come to our programs, they, their major trauma would have happened when they were children, or
Mm.
in a relationship, not necessarily in uniform, but then made much worse because of their military service or their service as first responders. So we talk about that. We talk about trauma and what it is and what it isn't. But then, as we've discussed, the majority of the week is spent just talking about how to move forward in spite of that. So it's not a question of getting over it or forgetting it or whatever.
Yeah.
It's making a decision to not be chained to it anymore. I'm not going to be a slave or a prisoner to that past trauma anymore. I can move forward. There is hope and there is purpose. And then that comes back to understanding who I am on the other side of that trauma or that traumatic experience or that job. And one of the things that really helps us is that the people who teach in our program and lead our program all started as students. And so they came as a veteran, service member, first responder. They came to a program, they found help. And then after a long process of training, they get up and they're talking to a class of people just like them. And so it's very much a peer-to-peer environment where you can look someone in the eye and say, I know where you are because I've been there and I've struggled the same way that you've struggled. And I've come out on the other side, or I'm still working through it, but I'm moving the right direction. And so it creates this environment that's very much like being in the military, right? As we're working on
Mhm.
this together, and it's this, um, I guess, mentorship or peer-to-peer type environment. So it's very, very helpful. Um, Over the years, we've had over 7,000 people come through one of those week-long programs. We have just over 1,000 a year come through right now, and so the growth has been exponential. And man, I mean, I could give you specific stories, but the stories are very, very common. They're people who show up on a Monday, and
Mhm.
most of the time, they're not coming to us because we're faith-based. They're coming to us because they've tried everything else and it hasn't worked. Our program, we don't charge to attend the program. We don't charge for travel to get to the program. We cover all of those costs through donors, and so they're with us because they've tried everything else. They have nowhere else to go, and so this is the kind of, let me try something different.
Mhm.
And what they find, many in the process of that, is, um, clinical therapies help, medication can help. It has its place. Those things certainly can be a benefit. But if you're not building your life and even incorporating those other therapies into your life on the right foundation, a foundation that doesn't change,
Mhm.
clarity around who you are, understanding your goal. Where am I going with all of this? If the foundation's not right, then the rest of it's going to fall short. And so, what we help people do is build the foundation, to build that foundation of faith, to understand that if there's a God and he created you with a purpose. This isn't a random thing that happened and you're just trying to figure it out on your own. He has a plan for you and he has a purpose for you. And there is direction that's associated or tied to that purpose and plan. And so, man, it's crazy to watch. So our programs typically begin on a Monday, and on Thursday we have time set aside for the students to get up, and for 20 minutes they can say whatever they want. And typically it's, we encourage them to tell their story, and it's a story of where you were before you came, what you've learned this week, and what you hope to do when you go home. And I mean, it's thousands of stories. I've heard thousands of stories of
Mhm.
folks who served in combat, who have led in extremely difficult environments, and then came home and the bottom fell out, or because of something that happened while they were serving, the bottom fell out, and they tried to deal with it. They tried to numb it. They self-medicated. They pursued other things to just make it go away. And none of it was dealing with the issue. And what they found being with us and being around others who were struggling the same way and had learned, this thing of identity and understood purpose and hope, what they found that week was that A, they're not alone. B, it's not unusual what they're thinking. These thoughts are not unique to them. This is what a lot of people deal with. But C, there is a path forward. And for the first time, the light comes on and goes, oh man, I can actually live a productive life. I can find a new identity and purpose. I can find a new hope. And so you take these strong military leaders who've led in these incredible environments, the bottom's fallen out, and you kind of close the door on the bottom, right? And you say, this is the
Mhm.
foundation. Let's build a life from here. And it's lives put back together, it's marriages restored, it's relationships with kids rebuilt. And this takes a long time. Our program is 5 days long. That's just the start. We have what we call aftercare program. This is us working with each individual after they graduate to get them to the counseling they need or the other, whatever other resources they need, get them into communities that can help them. And that process of rebuilding may take a while, and it does for a lot of people. But it starts with going, okay, I'm not that thing that brought me here. My identity is different. I know who I am. I have a purpose. There is hope, and I just need help getting it all back together. And we'll work with those folks on the other side of that. So Yeah, man, we've seen some, I mean, just crazy stuff. It's funny because on Monday, when people show up, typically they're pretty angry, not happy they're there, right? They tried everything else. And so we'll have a meeting at the end of that Monday. And for years, the conversation was, This is going to be the one where people aren't going to get help. And that's going to be the guy that's not going to." And you give it time, you let people realize they're not alone, and there is a path forward. And it's amazing what you see happen.
Mhm. It is incredible. I mean, you mentioned kind of a lot of people coming into it being like in a hopeless situation.
Yeah.
They've tried
Yeah.
everything, but in that moment, that's really when it's kind of counterintuitive, but that's when people are most open to
Sure.
God,
Yeah.
right? Like
That's right.
when
That's
it's
right.
when all other options are off the table.
Yeah, they've tried everything else, and so, and that first day that people are with us, we'll have everybody go around the room and take 30 seconds to introduce yourself, and then
Mhm.
just tell us why you're here, right? So just a quick icebreaker. Um, and it's very common for someone during that 30 seconds say, "Hey, my name is, I serve wherever, and I'm here because I've tried everything else, and if this doesn't work this week, I'm gonna take my life. I don't have any other option."
Wow.
That's not uncommon at all. And so, yeah, it is the end of the road. I've tried everything else. I wouldn't have been open to God 2 years ago or faith 2 years ago, but I'm willing to at least listen. And that's all we
Mm.
ask of them is
Wow.
just listen.
That's powerful. So I'm curious to get your opinion on funding for, these types of programs, because it obviously there's a massive need for it for
Yeah.
combat veterans coming back, first responders. You mentioned that your program is privately funded and by donors, which is amazing. Do you think there needs to be more of of a funding side coming from government funds as well, or does there need to be both? We need to also have more people, stepping up you know, um, with foundations like yours that are doing this work.
I think it's both. I mean, this is my opinion, I guess, but
Mhm.
we look at the major funding recipient for the government as it relates to veterans, and that's the VA, the Veterans Administration, huge budget. That budget increases every year, and,
Mhm.
and and I think most administrations have a commitment to helping veterans, and that's not a left or right thing. It's I think most administrations would say we want to help the men and women coming home from Iraq and
Mhm.
Afghanistan or wherever they've served, and so funding the Veterans Administration, the VA gets a lot of heat, and a lot of that is deserved. But the VA does a great job on physical injuries, and I mean the technologies. If you visit one of the larger VA centers in the country, the technologies, the things that have developed to deal with so many of these injuries and stuff, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable,
Mhm.
best in the world. And so the VA is very good at physical injuries. What it struggles with though are what I would call, the spiritual wounds or the mental and the psychological, issues or impacts of service. And so I don't know that more money needs to go there.
Mhm.
Um, but there are organizations like ours and many other organizations that address this from maybe a different perspective than the VA would or could. And so it's very helpful for us to be able to say to individuals, this is who we are, this is how we approach this. And so as you donate and you give your money, your resources to help people, give that to organizations that align with your values and your beliefs and what you would, if you had a service member, a place that you would want them to go if they were struggling. And so
Mhm.
I think it's both. Um, this administration has talked, and we've had meetings. I've been in DC, I've been in the White House to talk to the um, Office of Faith and the VA directors about funding and funding sources and how that can work for organizations like ours and not just ours. There are others that are like ours, and not all faith based, but just kind of non clinical programs.
Mhm.
And there is a desire, I think, to fund organizations like ours, but um, it just hasn't happened, not in a meaningful way. And so um, I think it's both. I guess it's kind of a long, wandering answer, but I think people need to donate to organizations that align with their values. To
Mhm.
understand that there are organizations like ours that serve veterans, service members, first responders, and spouses, from a faith perspective. And if that aligned with your values, then support organizations like ours. I think the government is doing everything that it can, but it will always fall short if it doesn't establish that foundation. And
Yeah.
so the way that we have talked about this, even with leadership at the VA, is it's a continuum of care. It's not one or the other. It has to be all of the things. And so, I think people need to have the right foundation, and then some of these other therapies can be very helpful. But if you don't have the right "I know who I am" in place, then the rest of it's going to fall short. And so it's everything working together, and that's where the logjam has been, as you can imagine. Government and non-governmental organizations don't always work well together, and so
Yeah.
um, so we all do what we can, and continue to do the best that we can to help as many folks as possible.
Absolutely. And you're doing a fantastic job. And I want to give you a chance now, to tell my listeners if they are able to help you, how they can, where they would go to donate, and also link and plug, your podcast, your books, anything
Yeah.
else you're working on.
Well, I really appreciate that. For anyone interested in the work of Mighty Oaks, just go to our website, mightyoaksprograms.org, mightyoaksprograms.org. There you can find out how to attend a program if you're a veteran, service member, first responder, or spouse. The biggest button on that homepage is apply, and you apply there. Again, no cost. We're dealing with a lot of folks who are applying, and so we have a team that will help figure out when you could attend and what all that looks like. But you just apply there, and then we take care of the rest. So that's a help to you. There are other resources there. We got videos and downloadable books on post-traumatic stress and suicide and resiliency, and so some of those are just free resources to you. Also, of course, on the website would be a place to support financially if that's something you're interested in as well. So you can check all of that out. The main podcast that I do and we produce at Mighty Oaks is called March or Die, and that is linked on our website as well. So anything about me, our organization, and the other stuff that we do is all found there. So go to mightyoaksprograms.org.
All right. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Appreciate everything you're doing. And I just want to encourage the listeners again to go check out all of Jeremy's work.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it, man.
All righty. All right, guys, that is a wrap for today's show. Another episode of Finding Freedom. If you like this show, if you like everything that we have here on the Lions of Liberty Podcast Network, please do subscribe to wherever you listen to this, be that on your podcast app or on YouTube or Rumble. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you really like it, leave us a nice little 5-star rating and a review as well. And if you want more content from us than the free content that is already out there, you can go to Patreon or Locals and join up there and get a bunch of perks, merchandise, all that good stuff. So thank you all for listening. I will see you all next week with another awesome interview. In the meantime, always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.